All right.
Mhm.
So, just as an intro for us to get right into it and get started, I would like
Mhm.
a simple nyana introduction ya hore abuti Sibusiso Laz Khatebe ke mang
Mm.
hantle. What how would you answer that?
In a in a short and simple, yeah, a very difficult ask, but I'll try.
Mm.
I'll try to be, straight to the point. Well, I think first and foremost, I'm a child of God. I think that's the most important identity, above the other, extras. I'm a child of God. Born and bred in Balfour, Pumalanga, but also lived God for about 6 years of my life, then came back this side. In terms of then the other identities, I'm an author of two books. I'm also a full time dad. I'm also a youth leader in various sectors. I'm a youth leader at church, but I'm also a youth leader in the community as well. I've been involved in various youth leadership initiatives. So, yeah, I'm also a pastor in training in the AFM, that is the Apostolic Faith Mission of SA. So, I'm currently busy with my theological studies. So, yeah, I think that would be basically it in a nutshell. I'm a huge, advocate for mental health, specifically mental health for men.
Mm.
Mental health, because I think my gender doesn't really, take that part of their lives seriously. So I'm a huge advocate for, healthy masculinities, and part of that is having, a good handle on your mental health in order to show up for the people that you love, but most importantly, to show up for yourself properly. So
Mm.
yeah, I think that would be it in as short as I, tried to make it. That's who I am in a nutshell.
Okay. Lovely to hear that. Just to go back a little bit, what guy?
So Hankonoka ke put Chaba, but regular only as where I was.
Oh,
So
can I just? That's my dad's
no,
phone. Can I just move that quickly? Okay. I'm just gonna take it and keep it on silent. He'll come and get it.
all right,
Okay.
no,
Yes. Hangkhona ke
yeah,
lusaka.
no Hankono ke put Chaba,
Hangkhona
Mwana
ke
ke
phutha chaba.
yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Familiar with those areas. Um.
Okay.
Nna bohading ke phutha chaba, and then hangkhona ke magalaneng.
Oh, all right, okay.
Yeah. Another reason why I ask is because my maiden name ke Khates. So I'm like, ha. My father must tell me something here. What's going on?
Very interesting.
Ah, hey, how? Khatebe mong hape wa qoqa ho etsahetseng?
Yeah, we are all over the place. We are all
Eh,
over the
eh,
place.
actually, you're right. Okay, Abutino, I thank you so much for that for your intro. I think what touched me a lot ke part ya you caring for mental health for men specifically, because that's something that gets to me a lot. It really
Yeah,
does hurt for me. I like um there can never be more than enough resources, but I do see how there is a lot for women, and I have not seen enough for men. And I've had men in my space, from family members to friends, that's needed help, and I've had times where I didn't know who like what do I say, because where do men really go, right?
yeah,
So it's really great to hear that. I think I did tell you about the Suicide Prevention Month events that I want to do in September, specifically focusing on men, and that is one of the reasons why I push that thing in Suicide Prevention Month for men
yeah,
specifically, is because of that. Or I don't know, just trying to add my foot or finger into pushing conversation yeah, mental
yeah,
health when it comes to men, because conversation yo ha e etsahale hakalo, and it's a very important one. It's scary to hear that your brother's gone or your father is gone, or and I feel like I remember I was talking to an Uber driver about this at some point, and he was like, "As a man, we all know someone close to us that has committed suicide." And I was like, "Hey, that's a yeah."
Sure.
Have you heard of a lot of spaces where, or that you are aware of, where men generally find themselves, sorry, this is where I can go here, hack a shop?
Not really. There's very few. I haven't heard a lot because I think we generally, in our society, we generally don't regard men as human. I think that's mainly the challenge. Is that we just expect men to show up ready-made, but we
Mm,
hardly, consider the fact that men also need the resources and the spaces in
mm,
order for them to show up as those ready-made packages. They are made somewhere, and if we don't
mm,
have those spaces and resources for them to be, okay, and to show up as the versions that we need them to be, then we can't expect them then to show up, as, macho, as, figured out as we need them to be. So I haven't heard of a lot of spaces specifically for men. There are spaces out there, but I think men generally also, because of the way we are socialized, then tend to have this thing, "Ah, gore, ah, I'll be okay," or because we've been raised with that old thing, "Ah, gore, monna ha lle ke nku, o llela ka hare," and all of those things.
mm,
So when we embrace those things, then eventually, I want to like only you will literally die because
mm,
it gets to a point where you don't know what to do with yourself, and then you end up thinking, "Oh, okay, the only option left for me is to basically exit this earth." Kanti, if we have spaces or initiatives to say this is a safe space for men to be able to discuss their issues, then we then at least ease some of the load that you will face as a man. We do have, at least on my side of the world, we do have a few places.
mm-hmm,
There's one in Soweto that I know of. It's called Kinajita. It's also an initiative by another
mm-hmm,
brother from the AFM, who runs men's
mm-hmm,
sessions. I'm also, in the early stages of starting an initiative called Men Weekend Foundation, which also then is looking at hosting such spaces for men to be able to be vulnerable, but also be safe. Have that space of safety
mm,
where they can talk about issues that they go through. But more than that, to also have the necessary resources, to be able to be the men that they need to be and to show up in society, but most importantly, to show up for themselves, because
mm,
you can't go out of an empty cup. You need to fill yourself up first in order for you to be able to show up for others. This is why even when, they're making demonstrations when you're taking a flight, uh, to say that in the case of an emergency, you must put on the mask on yourself first before you help another person.
mm,
It's for that reason, to say that you can't show up for another person if you haven't showed up for yourself, because
mm,
you are placing yourself and that person in danger. But if you take care of yourself first, then you can be able to show up for another person, which is largely the reason why I wrote then my second book, which is Men and Manhood, Conversations on Masculinity, to try and you know get that conversation out there, to say, even if I'm not physically there, but at least the resources in the form of the book that I've written, at least let that reach the men out there, to say what exactly is a man, what makes a man, what contributing factors are there, what players are there in society that contribute towards the making of a man, and what type of support does a man need, and as a man, how do you view yourself, and how does that impact how you show up in society, and how you show
mm-hmm,
up for others and yourself, because how you view
mm,
yourself will also impact how you also show up for yourself mentally and otherwise.
mm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that was. All right. Now I hear you. Can you tell me a little bit about? I actually do want to speak about both your books, ne? Conversations with My Peers, Le Men and Manhood. But I think because you touched on men and manhood, can we start with that one and then about conversations with my peers?
Okay, yeah. So with men and manhood, the idea is to um, make sure that I show up for men because I think there's not enough conversations happening in our society around what manhood is. There's a lot of expectations of what a man should be, but there's not a lot of conversations around that. Women are fortunate. I always say this because you guys have all sorts of forums, Lenalidi Society, the Talk Fair, and all of those things where you have those spaces where you can equip each other and on how to be a woman, what is the ideal woman. But as for men, we have very little of those spaces. It's almost like we expect men to just be, to just exist, and have this expected version that we place on them, but without the necessary resources to actually say, what do we mean when we say man up? Those are common phrases, but what exactly do you mean when you say to someone man up? What does that entail? Uh, we often say he's not man enough. What is man enough? Exactly. What components make up, this man enough that we speak of. So all of those things. Then the book was birthed out of that, to say, let's define this animal that we call a man. Let's define this concept of manhood. What is it exactly? Who contributes? I talk about issues like, the importance of positive role models for men, the importance of, father figures, even if it's not your biological father, but a father figure is necessary in a boy child's life. I talk about the role of mothers as well, and other women in the life of a boy child or of a man for that matter. I write mostly from a Christian perspective, but the book is basically friendly for everyone, to read. I also talk about mental health and the impact as well of social media, because social media is where these expectations mostly play out. The expectations to buy someone a bouquet of flowers, and then there's pressure to say, smang mang, boyfriend there, your husband there, mrekets 1, 2, 3, therefore, Lena, and all of those things. How do you handle those pressures? How do you handle issues like, hashtag men are trash? How do you counter that and make sure that you are identity as a man, and not, play into that, prevalent definition that, men are nothing, men are trash, men are this and this, because it's a prevalent, idea that is out there, especially in social media, where basically every day there's this constant bashing of men. So how do you build a strong enough man that can be able to go on social media and look at those images and those things and not identify themselves as that, but rise above all of them, and be able to be secure in their identity to say, yes, I see all of these things, but I am a man, and this is the type of man that I am, and show up as that on a daily basis. So that's the initial and the main idea behind the book, to say these are the resources, these are the tools, we are giving you as a man, to say, over and above all these negative definitions, this is who you are and this is how you can build up, and these are the contributing factors towards then the making of this man that we are looking for. Yeah, so I talk about the importance of marriage, the importance of, we in the Christian community, we have this concept of sexual purity, but most of the time we look at it mostly from a point of leading up to marriage. But no one talks about when you are in marriage, you still need to maintain that sexual purity as well, and not be a man that runs around and, does all sorts of funny things, but, also maintain your faithfulness even within the marriage that you get into and all of that. Also, the preparation towards marriage. We do that a lot with girls, but you find that not so much on the boy side of things, So you have a lot of women that are prepared for marriage, but they are prepared for people that are not prepared for marriage. So then it gets awkward when you are married, because you are 700% ready and the man is like 10% ready. then it's just
Mm.
a recipe for so those things in that book. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That was very thoughtful actually, the way you packaged all of that stuff. Um I feel like it's something that would be impactful for men of all stages. Uh, and from my perspective, it would be an interesting read, even as a woman. And you will tell me what your thought process was around that, right? But even as a woman, because of at the end of the day, we are surviving with men in society. Like no matter what we want to say or what we are affected by or what we have a problem with, what we like, whatever it is. So contributing positively to another man is going to do the same back to me in some other way, right? Um, so I would feel like a read like that would do something as a woman, would do something in terms of even understanding men to a certain extent. Just for the
Yeah.
fact that there's a conversation like that made for men, that means, oh, okay, this is probably usually where their head is at. And then now I have a bit of an understanding of who they are and what they're about, which makes it easier. The more you understand, the more information you have, the less you judge, the more you are,
Yes.
you're open to conversation. Is simple, is
Mm.
and so I'm happy about that. And another thing that I'd also really quite been passionate about is that I believe that societies are created by men. Haven't had this conversation with women before, and I don't want to start that fight. But I am very pro. I believe in Indoda with Bona, please. So I actually believe that it's started by men. Societies are started by men, and if they worked on themselves a lot better, that means that the people that they marry and the kids that they raise to become similar to them are going to be, it becomes a ripple effect. The ripple effect ikala from men. That's where my thought process is always at. So okay, if this gent gets it right, he's going to get the woman that's getting it right, and then they're going to focus on getting the kids that are getting it right, and then societies grow from that place going forward. So leaving men behind in working on, we need to do better as a society, and not wanting to see what does this better look like when we are
Mm.
integrating as men and women, as opposed to just being like do better in the society and just focus on one side. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of work that had to be done for women to be where we are today, but the extreme end, not only the extreme end, you're focusing on men as a problem, the extreme end of focusing on women as a problem, at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah.
that's a great thing. And also speaking about the impact of a mom. Another thing that always got to me is seeing the relationship that boys tend to have with their mothers as
Mm.
kids. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, this is so pure and so gentle and like, so protected. Like it's such a lovely thing. What happens when we get to a point where, I don't know, things go so bad, so wrong, to the statement, yeah, men are trash. Like by the time it gets to that, because that's such a powerful thing to utter out of your mouth, to actually say somebody else is trash, is nonsense that far. It's not something that I feel like another person should feel like they have the right to even say about anybody else. So it's such a
Mm.
powerful thing for people to be saying. But okay, so then tell me about your thoughts on what you think women would need or get from reading a book like the one that you've written.
Yeah, I think the thing that I keep emphasizing, especially for women that come to me and say, "Oh, that book is for men," and I always say, "No, the book is for everyone," because you
Mm.
interact with on a daily basis, whether it's colleagues, whether it's your
Mm.
brother, your father, your husband, your cousin. There's always some sort of man in your life that you interact with. So it's important then to also have that understanding that what exactly. is the thought process behind how men are, and how men are socialized, and also what has led to the type of men that we see manifesting, of which also it's a minority, but because we focus so much on saying the negative things about men, then sometimes then it makes it seem like it's the majority of men that are like that. But in reality, you find that there are a lot
Yes.
of good men out there. They're just silenced by the noise that's
Mm.
happening around them, and trying to define, them through a narrow lens of, the actions of a few men that, are negative. And this is not to erase any, experiences and any, real dangers and horrible experiences that women have gone through. But it's also to say that we've in the process of dealing with the traumas that men have brought into society, we've almost then dehumanized men completely, to a point whereby when
Mm.
we think of a man, when we look at a man, we no longer think of a human being first. We think only of the negative actions that other men have performed, and therefore we've painted everyone with one brush to say this is how men are. We'll come across
Yes.
statements like men are disappointing, men are this and this and this and that. But in reality, when you are interacting with real men out there in real life, you'll find that there's tons of good men that are out there that have just been relegated to a corner whereby they can't even express themselves. You should see some of the manifestations on social media. If you try and
Mm.
even speak of a man in a positive light, the type of backlash you will get. It's almost like there's an agenda to destroy, the man and the
Mm.
and it seems to be the winning narrative that is out there. So that is why then I felt that it's important to write this book. One, to empower men. Two, to empower women with knowledge of men and how men operate and how men are made up, and also to be able to then coexist with men and to co-build. And you said something important as well, that societies are built by men, and it's a reality that we like to run away from, because we want to then promote these boss babes, these powerful women and all of that, which is a great thing. Yes, women are capable of doing that, but at the end of the day, we won't build any lasting society if it's only women that are doing that without the help of women, because we are codependent. The both genders cannot exist without the other, and we cannot erase that. Because even the strong women that are shouting on social media, at the end of the day, some of them are shouting on social media lying on the chest of a man, and doing all of those
Mm.
things, projecting a certain strong image out there,
Mm.
whilst in the background she has her own man, she has a stable relationship going on. But because we need to keep this narrative on social media, sometimes people perform,
Mm.
and they perform things that are not necessarily true when you really look behind. And it's one of the chapters in my first book. Actually, the last chapter talks about the link between mental health and social media, to say that most of the images that you see on social media are not real,
Mm.
and sometimes we drive ourselves into depression over things that don't even exist in the first place.
Yes.
Someone will post the latest iPhone 16 and flowers and whatnot, only to find that person doesn't even have those.
Mm.
Because we are flexing on social media, you look at your life and think that your life is not going anywhere, to the point where you are depressed, you have anxiety and all of these things, only to find that the person that you think has their life all figured out doesn't even have the things that they are flaunting on social media, or they've borrowed them, or it's some false narrative. Because on social media, we only put up what we want people to
Mm.
see. We don't, we put up our real
Mm.
lives. We're always performing on social media. So that's why it's important to guard our mental health when it comes to these things, because you can be depressed by something that doesn't even exist, thinking hore, Umbali has her own life all figured out, only to find that she cries
Mm.
herself to sleep on a daily basis, because the life that she portrays on social media is not real. We've heard many stories of people coming out, to say, the life that I had portrayed on social media, having 7 cars, doing all of these things behind the scenes was usually a very bleak picture that we don't project,
Mm.
onto the public. Things like those, it's important to then be able to take those images that we see on social media with a bit of salt, to say, yes, this and this I can take up till
Yes.
this far, but beyond this point, I need to come back to reality and say, my life is taking a totally different direction. Let me rather focus on building my life. You know, if you see, or social media is starting to affect your mood, is starting to affect the way you look at yourself, it's better to step away, and take a step in a different direction. But coming back to the book, it's basically a book for everyone. Men and Manhood, it's
Mm.
for everyone, men and women, because we, as I said, we are codependent. We don't exist without each other. And I speak about the role of mothers, in shaping manhood, but also the importance of fathers as well, because yes, you can raise a beautiful boy child as a single mother, but at the end of the day, you are not a man. You cannot give that boy only what a man can give him. So the presence of a male person is also needed, even if it's not his biological father, but a father figure is necessary in order to teach that boy how to be a man, because you cannot teach him how to be a man as a woman, because you've never been a man in a day of your life. Yes, we can proclaim that women can do anything and everything that they set their minds to, which is great. Yes, they can do that, but you cannot do what you've never been. You cannot teach someone what you've never been. So for me to learn how to be a man, I need to learn from another man. I cannot learn that from my mother, as much as I love her. She can teach me the
Mm.
necessary parts of passion and all of those things, which are great, for a person to have a balance of those. But beyond that, I need to learn from a man. I've had great,
Mm.
excellent father figures in my life. My own father, you know, has never been present in my life. It's been there, here and there and all of that, but never fully present. But I've had good father figures in my life that I've learned from, in the form of my pastors, in the form of my uncles and all of that. So hence I'm saying it's important for a man to learn manhood from another man, as much as the mothers play their role, but their role is limited. And it's supposed to be limited because the two genders need each other at the end of the day. A healthy home is one whereby both parents are present and they are contributing equally to a child's life, so that they turn out, into a balanced human being, whether it's a daughter or a son. They need contributions from both sides. Even psychologically, the research shows, that, your identity and all of those things, they are shaped by the presence of both parents, or both figures rather, of motherhood and fatherhood. If you don't have one of those, then the likelihood that you will have problems as an adult is much higher. Even things like your crime rates, your behavioral issues, and all of those, they can be scientifically traced back to the presence or the absence of fathers in the home. So if fathers are not there, then society tends to take a very skewed direction towards the negative. Yeah.
Oh no, I hear you. I liked the part you were speaking of the link between social media and mental health, because that's another place that we are taking a lot of information from, that especially at a vulnerable age, if there isn't
Mhm.
the mother close by or the father close by, or anywhere into the space, it's very easy for kids at a very vulnerable age to decide to take on a father figure or a mother figure from with what they find on social media. But it also links into everything else, into how men feel after hearing certain things about them and their identity being affected. And then it goes back into mental health on so many different ways, which is why it's quite important that as much as we are looking into social media for the entertainment space or to keep up with what's going on around us, but it's also important to use social media to help you out with the important stuff, and especially stuff that has to do with your mental health, right? Um, I think that's one of the reasons why I got into doing this mental health stuff on social media because I saw what was going on with me, for example, in during COVID times. Because now I had so much more time on my phone, but I needed to unfollow a lot of people that I realized at that time I'm really struggling, and these people are making me feel like there's there's no going forward, as whether it's a lie or it's true, whatever it is that they put up over there. But in that moment, it's just not healthy for me and my mental health. And finding people that are contributing positively to my mental health were not enough. So yeah, but I understand the link. I'm
Mm,
happy with that. Okay, I think from that, why do you think mental health awareness is important?
okay. Yeah, I think it's important first and foremost to demystify what mental health is in the first place, because usually we wait until you are diagnosed, or you wait until there's an intervention. But it's important to get a handle of your mental health even before you get to a point where you quote unquote crash, or reach a point where you are not okay in the first place. So it's important. I mean, there's a saying that says prevention is better than cure. So as part of your taking care of your mental health, it's important to even prevent the point whereby you even get depressed, or get diagnosed with anxiety and all of these other mental health issues. But once you even get there, then you know how you then recover your mental state, and get it to a point where you are balanced. It's important first and foremost to remove all the things, all the triggers, basically, to make sure that you've removed the triggers. If your trigger is social media, or your trigger is a toxic family member, and all of those things, it's important first and foremost to make sure that you remove those. If you can't remove them, remove yourself from the situation, so that you get to a
Mm.
point whereby you are then able to regroup, and be able to then gather the strength that you need. Another important thing is to remember is that it's not an extraordinary thing. You are not alone. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of
Mm.
other people going through the same thing that you're going through. So um, it's important to remember that this is a normal thing that I'm going through, and the normal course of action is recovery, or even cure. From what you are going through.
Mm.
Just that positive mindset to say that I am going through this, but I am not this, because sometimes we tend to then take the labels and make them our identity. You are not your, bad mental health status. You are just going through that, and you are going through towards healing, towards recovery, towards whatever, positive end that you are aiming at. You are not what you are going through, because I see a lot of people, tend to take on those labels and make them their identities, then which doesn't help their progress in any way. So it's important to not take that on and make it an identity, to say I'm an anxious person. No, you are not an anxious person. You are just having anxiety issues, of which, if you steps to make sure that you manage the anxiety and situations that bring you to a state of anxiety, then you can be able to function normally in society, and be able to even get to a point whereby you are able to identify the triggers before they even affect you, so that you are able to navigate those spaces, in a positive way. And it's important to always remain positive,
Mm.
and take the necessary steps and measures, to make sure that you are okay. If you need to exercise, if you need to eat healthy, if you need, because some of these things have, physiological, roots to them. If you are not exercising, if you're not
Mm.
eating, then you start to get affected, and you start to manifest in a certain way because of those. So making sure that you fix those issues is an important part of that journey of mental health, and getting to a state of being healthy, and being able to now rise above a whatever state of ill health that you were in to get to a point whereby you are a healthy individual that can function in society, that is not easily triggered by things and all of these things, and making sure that you rise above, that situation or whichever triggers that you come across. So it's important to maintain those preventative measures in order to be able to rise above that. Otherwise, then you find yourself constantly in that state of depression, anxiety, and all these other things, because sometimes we don't take care of the underlying factors. We think they're just gonna go away by themselves. It's not gonna happen. If we don't take care of the underlying issues, the surface issues will always be there, because the roots, if we feed the roots, the plant will always be there. But if we starve the roots, the plant will die off by itself eventually.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Okay. What are your favorite um, routines that you have that works for you? Something that you do on a weekly, on a daily, on a monthly, but something that you know, when every time you just try to make sure you maintain this specific thing because it does something really great for your mental health.
I'm gonna sound stereotyped, but I think my daily or my frequent routine is most scheduling prayer times really helps to keep me focused. But another thing is also making sure that I stay off any social media content that doesn't align with my mental health. Making sure out, and if I need to unfollow people, then I unfollow those people or unfriend those who maintain my mental health. But also just checking in as well with the people that are around me. One with my partner, the other one with the brothers that I have in my circle that I check in regularly with, to just get, where I am, and also to check in on them where they are as well. That helps. But that one doesn't necessarily happen on a regular basis. Maybe I'll do it that on like a monthly basis, the check-in stuff, making sure that we are still on the same page, and that I'm okay. I have someone that I talk to, and that also I'm checking in on them as well. But the constant one, the most frequent one for me is prayer. Making sure that I make time for, and yeah, it really helps maintain my mental health, and also my spiritual health as well. So it kind of it cuts across many aspects of my life. So I mean, I know other people do stuff like meditation and stuff like that. So for me, it's prayer. Prayer really helps to make my mental health is on point, and that I keep my emotions in check and regulate them and all of that. So prayer helps me to filter out some of the noises that tends to come through. So after prayer, then it helps me to look at things in a better perspective. So it really really helps a lot. So yeah, and those check-ins with my partner, and also the brothers, the friends that I have that I check in with at least once a month. So that those are the mental health mechanisms that I have in place to make sure that I'm okay, I'm doing okay mentally and otherwise. Because I do
How?
believe in a approach,
Sorry.
that one aspect of your life tends to impact the other aspect. For me, the dominant aspect of my life is obviously my spiritual life. So then it kind of, if that is okay, it spills over into the other areas of my life. Yeah, you were saying.
Okay. Okay. That we'll come back to the prayer one because I have questions. Is how often with your social media, how often do you check in on it to make sure you follow, unfollow what is not helpful for you?
I don't think I have a certain mechanism that I can say I have in place. I do this on a certain times. But because also I've been trying to also cut down on social media presence there, but because the nature needs me to be on social media, sometimes you are forced to be there. But I think for me, in terms of unfollowing and making sure that I remove content that doesn't align with my mental health, as soon as I come across it, I remove it. So I won't say maybe I do it on a weekly basis or a monthly. As soon as I come across it, I remove it completely. Just this morning, I think I unfollowed about 3 people. Where I came across content as like, no, this is not healthy for me to consume. Then I just unfollowed those people. Sometimes you have to mute certain stories or unfollow the people completely, stuff like that. So it for me, I just do it, as soon as I come across it. It's not a thing where maybe I'll say I'm doing a social media maintenance on a weekly basis and stuff like that. No, as soon as I come across it, I remove. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I understand that. I think that's also how I function around that. Just if I'm seeing something and it links to other people that I'm seeing are doing great or doing something good on social media, then I'll just follow, and then as soon as I bump into something that's off, then I we just get rid of it immediately. Because
Yeah.
also social media is so instant. So if you say that on Mondays, I just quickly check in on my social media to get rid of what I need to get rid of, you know, what happens on the other days. But okay, I understand that. Then the prayer part,
Mhm.
what a difficult when you are within a bad space with
Mm.
your mental health. Because I try for me to do the most, not even just with prayer, but my spiritual life in general, my Bible study, my all of that stuff. I try my best to do the absolute most when I'm in the best of places. And then as I sink in, I know, okay, fine, I am doing better. I can go back to my prayer journal or whatever, and I'll get back to like my pick me up again, right? But then there are times where it is like it's a really bad space mentally. It's an occasional thing, doesn't happen all the time. But when there are those really difficult moments, um, does what really works for you in terms of maintaining that prayer part? Is it scheduling prayer and making sure at that time, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what's going on, you just still stick to it, or what works for that part, your spiritual life, to work out when you're in a really bad space?
Um, for me, it's about making sure that I schedule the prayer sessions,
Mm,
especially if I'm not feeling okay,
mm,
because I know that even if I can sit there and not say anything, um, I know that God hears me because
mm,
he hears my heart. But sometimes I don't have to say anything. I can just sit there and be in that state of not being okay. But the fact that I am not okay in His presence for me is more than enough. It's not about
mm,
having to say something or having something to say, but it's about that maintaining that relationship to say that um, because prayer is a relationship for me with
mm,
God, whether so it can't be then I only pray when things are going okay. It would be basically like if I'm in a serious relationship or in a marriage whereby I only interact with my partner when we are okay or when I'm okay. Then when I'm not okay, then I shift away. It doesn't make sense. So even if I'm not okay, I'll still make that time and be not okay in his presence, but knowing that at least I've maintained that relationship, then it would make sense that I've made that time of schedule. Yes. So that making sure that I do schedule those prayer sessions and I go there, whether or not I say anything for me is immaterial. But the
mm.
fact that I've gone to that session and I've made time for me is more important than saying that no, I'm not gonna pray today because I'm not feeling okay. That doesn't make sense. for me.
Okay, Unkarabili. I heard you. And I think the other one I noted down is the people that are in your space. That is really helpful. All right. Next one, for last one, is what advice
Yeah.
would you give to someone who is struggling with their mental health but is
Mm,
afraid to ask for help? So it's not that they don't know where to go; they just
mm.
that's up.
Uh, I think the easiest advice would be shout, because if you are drowning and so shout, make a noise, reach out to someone. um, Especially with men. I think men, we are bad at reaching out. We are bad at asking for help, because we have imposed upon ourselves the hero role and the provider role, the all the problem solver roles, that sometimes when we have problems, it's hard for us then to look to someone else to say, help, I'm drowning, help, I'm not okay, even if it's temporarily. If you're not okay, you're not okay, and you don't have to be ashamed of not being okay, because at the end of the day, we are all human. You can't do them all. You can't always be strong. You can't always, it's impossible for a human being to always be strong. In fact, by nature, we are fragile, people,
Mm,
whether male or female. The life of a human being is a fragile thing, by nature. So we can't then want to be strong even when we are not strong. Just, don't be ashamed that right now I'm not okay and I'm not doing okay. And the other thing is that for men, we hardly have access to the language to express ourselves emotionally. But just acknowledging even that to yourself, that I'm not okay, sometimes is more than enough. And then, once you've acknowledged that, then you can start working towards a solution. But getting to that point where you actually recognize and are able to utter the words that I'm not okay, even if you don't know, because I think for men, most of the time, we can't even differentiate between being sad and depressed, or what's the difference? What's normal sadness and what was depression, and also then reflecting to say, where is this coming from? Where, what exactly happened to get me to this point? Because sometimes something can happen on Monday and I only react to it today. But now I have this sadness that I don't know, or it's a guy. So I need to sit and reflect, or oh, by the way, something happened on Monday or on Sunday, and it's only affecting me now, and being able to reach out, and also just letting people in, I think is another important one. Just learn to let people in and accept help, because we are here for each other. We are here to lift one another up, and that's the nature of human relations. We by nature we are relational beings, and if we are relational beings, it means that also I look to others for them to uplift me. It's not about me being always the Superman, being the one that always carries the things and solves the problem. Sometimes I have my own problem that I'll need to partner with others in order for me to solve them. I can't, solve all of my problems on my own. It's impossible. That's
mm,
why Sesotho se re motho ke motho ka batho. You are not an island. You don't exist in a vacuum. You need others to be able to help you to navigate life. Otherwise, even if it's going to your pastor or your leader or whoever is there in a position of authority over your life, it's important to be able to reach out to those people, whether it's friends, whether it's parents, whether it's people in a position of authority. Someone, just reach out to someone. Otherwise, these suicide rates will not go down, because we refuse to reach out and to say, I'm not okay, I'm really not okay, and I need help. Yeah, so we don't need to be ashamed. I mean, we all go through stuff. It's normal to go through stuff. It's not something that's unique to you as an individual, but we all go through stuff and we all have moments of weakness and not having it all together or figured out. And it's okay.
Mm.
You know? Yeah.
No, thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. I think you saw
Mm.
throughout this conversation, I've been taking notes.
Yeah.
And taking notes. Yeah, that's really helpful. I really appreciate your input and all that you had to say today. It really means a lot to me, and I do believe that a lot of people are going to learn from that. Um, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, and a lot that has been broken down in a way that is very easy to understand.
Mm.
I think also the way that you put things makes the next person feel heard. So I really appreciate our conversation today. Thank you so much. The last thing that I do want us to get to is where can people find you and our audience today? How can they connect with you?
Okay. Firstly, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to engage and have a conversation with you. My social media, I'm mostly available on all social media platforms except for Twitter. Well, X now. I'm not that active there, but Facebook, it's Sibusiso Laz. And then on Instagram, it's Sibusiso_Laz. And then here on TikTok, it's at Sibusiso Laz. And then which other platform? YouTube as well, but I don't really post much on YouTube. But I am available on YouTube as well. But most of my conversations and previous live sessions would be on Facebook and Instagram mostly, where I've had sessions as well with a few of my friends on Instagram, discussing issues around manhood and all of that. So if you go through my Instagram profile, you'll find most of the live sessions that are saved there, that people can go through and go back and watch and, sort of build up this a conversation that I've had that have culminated into the second book that I have even with the first book. So yeah, in terms of also then getting a hold of me to get my books, mostly I'm available on WhatsApp. I have a business WhatsApp, which is 076 115 2623. I'll also just type it here as well, where people can get a hold of me to place an order, and get the other services that I offer as well. I do also offer business consultancy as well for people who want to register businesses or who have registered businesses and want to maintain their compliance and stuff like that. So it would be your SARS, tax clearances, business registrations, business strategies, all of those. That's my main consultancy business. For people who want to write, I also offer then, as well, from writing all the way to proofreading, editing, cover design, layout, and all of those things. So, yeah, because one of my passions is making sure that aspiring authors, especially from townships, those stories get out there, and stories that most of the time would be rejected by the mainstream publishers, but you know you can self-publish. That's another option, to say you don't have to go through the normal route, but you can self-publish, and then I help then guide young authors, upcoming authors, to be able to navigate that space as well. Yeah, so that's how people can get a hold of me in those platforms.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think you mentioned two things that I just wanted to confirm. Jita and I think you mentioned Men Weekend Foundation.
Yeah, I'll just type it as well. um yeah, so
Oh,
it's Men
sorry,
Weekend
not
Foundation.
weekend. Okay.
No, 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 not a weekend. It's Man Weekend Foundation. Yeah, but it's been around for a while. It's just that now we are in the process of registering, because we had a group before, a gospel group by the same name, of which we were trying to reach men through music, and also then have initiatives around men's issues and the whole issues around manhood. So that name is birthed out of the name of that music group that we had in the past. So yeah, it's been a passion of mine for quite a number of years now to make sure that we reach men in all aspects. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no, awesome. I've gotten all of the, yeah, I'm satisfied. I just wanted to to check on that. Am I on the same page with you on that? But otherwise, no, thank you so much. These will be reposted and on YouTube. Please do come back and comment on the same post with your details, your information, where other people can find you, especially where people can find your book. I think that would be really important. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your evening and
Thank
attend
you.
to the babies that side. It's been too long.
Thank you.
Mphile nako a bone. All right,
Yeah.
no, thank
No,
you.
thank you.